The party was in full swing, a loud mix of laughter and music filling the air. I stood by the snack table, my eyes scanning the room for Caroline. She had disappeared a while ago, and I hadn't seen her since. My name is Greg Johnson, and for 17 years, I believed I was happily married to Caroline. Little did I know that tonight would shatter that belief. I spotted my friend Tom across the room and made my way over. "Hey, have you seen Caroline?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Tom shook his head. "Not recently. Last I saw, she was talking to her boss, Arthur." My stomach churned. Caroline had been spending a lot of time with Arthur lately, but I always brushed it off as work-related. Tonight, something felt different. I decided to look for her. After searching the main rooms without luck, I stepped out into the backyard. It was quieter out here, with only a few small groups chatting. I was about to head back inside when I noticed a side door leading to a small shed. The door was slightly ajar, and I heard faint voices from inside. Curiosity got the better of me, and I walked over. As I got closer, the voices became clearer, and one of them was unmistakably Caroline's. My heart raced as I peered through the gap in the door. There she was, my wife, on her knees with Arthur. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice me. Anger and betrayal surged through me. I wanted to burst in and confront them, but I was frozen, rooted to the spot. "Arthur, we need to be careful," Caroline whispered, her voice a mix of excitement and fear. "Relax, Caroline. No one will find us here," Arthur replied, his tone dripping with confidence. I couldn't watch anymore. I stepped back, my mind reeling. How could she do this to me? To our family? I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. I needed to handle this calmly, for the sake of our kids. Just then, Tom appeared behind me. "Greg, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I turned to him, my face pale. "Tom, I need you to help me with something. Can you distract everyone inside for a bit?" Tom looked confused but nodded. "Sure, but why?" "Just trust me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'll explain later." Tom headed back inside, and I gathered my courage. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures through the gap. It was evidence I hoped I'd never have to use, but I needed to protect myself and the kids. As I turned to leave, Caroline and Arthur emerged from the shed, laughing and adjusting their clothes. They froze when they saw me. Caroline's face went pale, and Arthur's smug expression faltered. "Greg, what are you doing here?" Caroline stammered, her eyes wide with fear. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, my voice cold and steady. "But I think I already know the answer." Arthur stepped forward, trying to look confident. "Greg, this isn't what it looks like." I shook my head. "Save it, Arthur. I know exactly what this is." Caroline reached out, her eyes pleading. "Greg, please, let me explain." I took a step back. "There's nothing to explain, Caroline. We'll talk at home. Right now, I need to think." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away, the sounds of the party fading into the background. My heart felt like it was breaking, but I knew I had to stay strong. For the kids, for myself. This was only the beginning, but I was determined to face whatever came next. The morning after the party was a blur of emotions and sleeplessness. I had spent the night replaying the events in my mind. The image of Caroline and Arthur seared into my memory. But there was no time to dwell on it. My youngest daughter, Lenny, needed me. I was in the kitchen, making breakfast for the kids when my phone buzzed. It was a call from Lenny's daycare. My heart skipped a beat as I answered. "Mr. Johnson, this is Mrs. Ellis from Little Stars Daycare. Lenny had a fall and hurt her leg. She needs stitches, and we can't reach your wife." "I'll be right there," I said, already grabbing my keys and heading for the door. Marissa, my 16-year-old, saw the look on my face. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Lenny had an accident at daycare. I'm going to get her. Can you keep an eye on Junior?" Marissa nodded, her eyes wide with worry. "Of course, Dad. Let me know if you need anything." I drove to the daycare as fast as I could, my police lights flashing. When I arrived, Lenny was sitting on a bench, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny and sucking on a lollipop. Her big blue eyes were red from crying, but she managed a small smile when she saw me. "Daddy," she cried, reaching out her arms. I scooped her up, kissing her forehead. "Hey, sweetheart. Daddy's here. Let's get you to the hospital, okay?" The principal, Mrs. Ellis, approached. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Johnson. She fell off the jungle gym. We've called an ambulance." "Thank you," I said, my voice tight. "I'll take her myself. The hospital's just a few minutes away." I strapped Lenny into her car seat and drove to the hospital, trying to keep her calm. "You're so brave, Lenny. Just a little cut. The doctors will fix you right up." When we arrived, I carried her into the emergency room. The nurses were quick, and soon a doctor was stitching up her leg. Lenny held my hand the whole time, her eyes full of trust. "You're doing great, Lenny," I said, squeezing her hand. "Almost done." When the doctor finished, I thanked him and took Lenny home. She was tired but in good spirits, munching on another lollipop the nurse had given her. I tried calling Caroline again, but it went straight to voicemail. Frustration bubbled up inside me. Once home, Marissa and Junior ran to us, their faces full of concern. "Is she okay?" Junior asked, his 12-year-old voice cracking with worry. "She's fine," I said, setting Lenny on the couch. "Just a few stitches. She handled it like a champ." "Where's Mom?" Marissa asked, looking around. I sighed, trying to keep my voice steady. "She was in a meeting and couldn't be reached. She'll be home soon." As if on cue, Caroline's car pulled into the driveway. She rushed in, her face pale and eyes wide. "Greg, what happened? Why didn't they call me?" "They tried, Caroline," I said, my voice cold. "I tried. Your phone was off." "I was in a meeting," she stammered. "I turned it off so it wouldn't interrupt." "Next time, put it on vibrate," I said, my patience wearing thin. "Lenny could have needed you." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. I didn't think." "That's right, you didn't think," I snapped, unable to hold back my anger. "Our daughter was hurt, and you were nowhere to be found." Marissa and Junior watched us, their faces a mix of confusion and fear. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. "We'll talk about this later," I said, turning to the kids. "How about we order some pizza for lunch?" "Yeah, pizza." Lenny cheered, her earlier pain forgotten. As I called to order, Caroline disappeared upstairs. I knew we had a lot to discuss, but for now, my focus was on the kids. They were my priority, and I would do whatever it took to keep them safe and happy. Later that night, as I tucked Lenny into bed, she looked up at me with her big, trusting eyes. "Daddy, are you and Mommy okay?" I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "We're fine, sweetheart. Just a little disagreement. Everything will be okay." "Promise?" she asked, her voice small. "I promise," I said, kissing her forehead. "Sleep tight, Lenny." As I closed her door, I knew that promise would be hard to keep, but for my kids, I would do anything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, I was just a father, doing my duty and protecting my children the best I could. The day after Lenny's accident, I felt like I was walking through a fog. Caroline's betrayal haunted my thoughts, and the realization that our marriage was built on lies gnawed at me. I couldn't let it consume me, though. I had to stay strong for the kids. As I prepared breakfast, my mind raced with plans. I needed to find out the full extent of Caroline's affair. If she had lied about one thing, what else was she hiding? I had to protect myself and the children. Caroline came downstairs, looking tired. Her eyes avoided mine as she poured herself a cup of coffee. The tension between us was palpable. "Morning," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Morning," she replied, barely above a whisper. Marissa and Junior shuffled into the kitchen, their faces still marked with concern from the previous day's events. They sensed something was wrong, but didn't know the full story. "Dad, can we have pancakes?" Junior asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Sure thing, buddy," I said, forcing a smile. "How about you, Marissa?" "Pancakes sound good," she said, giving me a small, encouraging smile. As I cooked breakfast, Caroline sat silently at the table, staring into her coffee cup. I needed to get some answers, but now wasn't the time. The kids didn't need to see us fight. Once they were off to school, I turned to Caroline. "We need to talk." She looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and resignation. "I know." "Not here," I said, glancing at the clock. "I have to go to work. We'll talk tonight." She nodded, and I left the house, my mind racing with what I needed to do. At work, I asked for a meeting with my boss, the head of the detective department. "Chief, I need some time off to handle some family matters," I said. "Everything okay, Greg?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "Just some personal stuff," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "I need a few days to sort it out." "Take the time you need," he said. "Family comes first." "Thanks, Chief," I said, feeling a mix of relief and dread. With the time off secured, I headed to an electronics store. I purchased several wireless voice recorders and a few small video cameras. It felt wrong, but I had to know the truth. I needed evidence to confront Caroline and protect myself in case things got ugly. Back home, I waited until Caroline left for an errand before setting up the devices. I placed a camera in the living room, one in our bedroom, and one in the guest room. I hid the voice recorders in places I knew Caroline frequented: her car, the living room bookshelf, and our bedroom. That evening, once the kids were in bed, I sat down with Caroline in the living room. My heart pounded in my chest as I prepared to confront her. "Caroline, I need to know the truth," I said, looking her straight in the eyes. "How long has this been going on?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked away. "6 years," she whispered. "6 years." I repeated, my voice filled with disbelief. "How could you do this to us? To our family?" "I'm sorry, Greg," she sobbed. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Sorry doesn't cut it, Caroline," I said, my voice breaking. "Do you have any idea what this is doing to me? To the kids? I know I've hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "But I never wanted to lose you." "It's a little late for that," I said, standing up. "I can't trust you anymore. I need time to think." I walked out of the room, leaving her crying on the couch. As I lay in bed that night, I knew our lives would never be the same. The unraveling had begun, and there was no turning back. I had to protect my kids and find a way to rebuild our lives, piece by painful piece. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart. I knew today was the day I needed to confront Caroline fully and lay everything out on the table. I couldn't live with the lies anymore, and I owed it to the kids to be honest about what was happening. As I made breakfast, the kids came into the kitchen, their faces showing the strain of the past few days. Marissa, my 16-year-old, was trying to be strong, while Junior, at 12, looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Morning, Dad," Marissa said, giving me a weak smile. "Morning, sweetheart," I replied. "How about some scrambled eggs?" "Sounds good," Junior mumbled, sitting at the table. I cooked breakfast in silence, my mind racing with what I needed to say to Caroline. She came downstairs, looking like she hadn't slept at all. She glanced at me, her eyes pleading for some kind of reprieve, but I couldn't give her that. "We need to talk after breakfast," I said quietly, so the kids wouldn't hear. She nodded, her shoulders slumping. "Okay." After the kids had eaten and left for school, I turned to Caroline. "Sit down," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling. "Greg, please, let me explain." "I don't want excuses," I said, feeling the anger rise in my chest. I want the truth. Why? Caroline, why did you do this? Tears streamed down her face. I don't know, she whispered. It just happened. I never meant to hurt you. 6 years, Caroline. 6 years of lies, I said, my voice breaking. And what about our kids? Did you ever think about them? I thought I could keep it separate, she sobbed. I thought I could still be a good mother. A good mother, I echoed, feeling a wave of bitterness. You were never there when they needed you. Yesterday, Lenny got hurt, and you were with him. How is that being a good mother? She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I'm so sorry, Greg. I'm so sorry. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, feeling a hollow ache in my chest. I don't know if I even want to try. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. What do we do now? We're getting a divorce, I said firmly. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'll make sure the kids are taken care of, but I can't be with you anymore. Her face crumpled, and she let out a choked sob. Greg, please, don't do this. We can fix this. It's too late, Caroline, I said, shaking my head. You broke something that can't be fixed. As I walked away, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The confrontation was over, but the hardest part was still to come, telling the kids. That evening, I gathered Marissa and Junior in the living room. Caroline sat silently on the couch, her eyes downcast. I need to talk to you both, I said, taking a deep breath. Your mom and I are getting a divorce. Marissa's eyes filled with tears. Why, Dad? What happened? It's complicated, I said, my voice gentle, but we think it's the best thing for everyone. Junior looked at me, his face pale. Are you going to leave us? No, buddy, I said, pulling him into a hug. I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out together. Marissa wiped her eyes. Will we still see Mom? Yes, I said, glancing at Caroline. You'll still see her. We'll work it out. The kids sat quietly, processing the news. I knew it would take time for them to understand, but I was determined to be there for them every step of the way. As I tucked them into bed that night, I felt a sense of resolve. The road ahead would be tough, but I had to stay strong for my children. They were my priority, and I would do whatever it took to protect them and rebuild our lives, one day at a time. The decision to get DNA tests was not one I took lightly. The thought gnawed at me for days, but I couldn't shake the need to know the truth. Caroline's affair had already shattered my trust. Now I needed to ensure my children were really mine. It felt like a betrayal to even question it, but the seeds of doubt were too deeply planted. One evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat down with the DNA test kits spread out on the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Caroline stood in the doorway, watching me with red-rimmed eyes. Greg, what are you doing? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to know, I replied without looking up. I need to know if they're mine. She took a step forward, her face pale. Greg, please, don't do this. I looked at her, feeling a surge of anger and sorrow. You did this, Caroline. I'm just trying to pick up the pieces. Without another word, I got to work. I had prepared a story for the kids, telling them it was just a fun science experiment for school. They were curious but didn't question it further. Marissa and Junior were old enough to understand it as a biology lesson, while little Lenny just giggled when I swabbed her cheek. A few days later, the results arrived. I sat at the kitchen table, the unopened envelope in front of me. My hands trembled as I tore it open, the paper crackling loudly in the silent room. Caroline stood across from me, wringing her hands. I scanned the results, my heart pounding in my chest. Each word seemed to blur together until the cold, hard truth hit me. None of the children were biologically mine. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Caroline let out a strangled sob, covering her mouth with her hands. Gray, I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I couldn't even look at her. I felt numb, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. "How could you?" I said, my voice shaking. "How could you lie to me for so long?" She sank into a chair, her body trembling. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I never thought. I never—" "Stop," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Just stop." I needed to get out of there, to clear my head. I grabbed the keys and left the house, the door slamming behind me. I drove endlessly for hours, the results burning a hole in my mind. I pulled into a park, the place where we used to take the kids when they were younger. It was quiet now, the playground empty. Sitting on a bench, I tried to process everything. My kids weren't mine, but that didn't change how I felt about them. I loved them more than anything, and they were my world. They needed me, and I couldn't let them down. When I finally returned home, the house was dark. Caroline was asleep on the couch, her face tear-streaked. I looked at her for a moment, then turned away, heading upstairs to check on the kids. They were all sound asleep, their faces peaceful and innocent. The next morning, I called a family meeting. The kids gathered in the living room, their faces curious and a little worried. Caroline sat apart from us, her eyes downcast. "I need to tell you something," I began, taking a deep breath. "I got some tests done, DNA tests, to find out if you're really my children." Marissa's eyes widened. "Why, Dad? Why would you do that?" I swallowed hard, feeling the lump in my throat. "Because I needed to know the truth. But I want you to understand something very important. No matter what those tests say, you are my children. I love you more than anything in this world, and nothing will ever change that." Junior looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. "What did the tests say?" I took another deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "The tests say that you're not biologically mine. But that doesn't matter to me. You are my children, and I am your father. We are a family, and nothing will ever change that." Marissa started to cry, and I pulled her into a hug. Junior joined us, and I wrapped my arms around both of them. Little Lenny, not fully understanding, climbed into my lap and hugged me tightly. "I love you, Dad," Marissa whispered through her tears. "I love you too," I said, my voice breaking. "I love all of you so much." As we sat there, huddled together, I knew we would get through this. We were a family, bound not by blood but by love. And that was something no DNA test could ever take away. The days following the DNA test results were some of the hardest of my life. Knowing the kids weren't biologically mine was a gut punch, but my love for them was unwavering. Caroline's betrayal, however, was something I couldn't ignore. It was time to take legal action and secure a future for my children and me. I sat in my lawyer's office, a small, cluttered room filled with stacks of legal documents. Janet, my lawyer, was a sharp, no-nonsense woman with years of experience in family law. "Greg, we need to be strategic about this," Janet said, adjusting her glasses. "We have strong evidence of infidelity and misrepresentation. This will work in our favor, but we need to be prepared for a fight." I nodded, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. I just want what's best for the kids. They need stability, and I can provide that. Janet gave me a reassuring smile. "We'll make sure of it. First, we need to file for divorce and request full custody of the children. We'll also seek child support and address the property division." Caroline arrived at the house that evening, looking worn and anxious. We sat down at the kitchen table, and I handed her the divorce papers. She looked at them, her hands shaking. "Greg, do we really have to do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "There's no other way, Caroline," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "This marriage is over. We need to focus on the kids now." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she nodded. "I understand. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. The apology felt too little, too late. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Caroline's lawyer, a slick man named Mark, tried to paint her in a sympathetic light, arguing that she deserved a substantial share of our assets and joint custody of the children. Janet was relentless, countering every point with evidence of Caroline's infidelity and her neglectful behavior. One day in court, Mark stood up, addressing the judge. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Johnson, has been an integral part of her children's lives. She deserves joint custody to maintain the bond she shares with them." Janet rose, her expression stern. "Your Honor, Mr. Johnson has provided a stable and loving environment for the children. Despite Mrs. Johnson's actions, we have evidence that she was often absent during critical moments, and that Mr. Johnson has been their primary caregiver. We request full custody for Mr. Johnson, with limited visitation rights for Mrs. Johnson." The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern demeanor, looked over the evidence carefully. "I've reviewed the testimonies and the evidence provided. It's clear that Mr. Johnson has been a consistent and stable presence in the children's lives. I am granting full custody to Mr. Johnson, with supervised visitation rights for Mrs. Johnson." Caroline's face crumpled, and she buried her face in her hands. I felt a pang of sorrow, but knew this was the best outcome for the kids. Outside the courtroom, Caroline approached me, tears streaming down her face. "Greg, I know I've messed up. I just want to be part of their lives. Please don't shut me out completely." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Caroline, I'll never stop you from being their mother. But you need to prove that you can be there for them, consistently. They need stability more than anything right now." She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. "I will. I promise." The legal battles took a toll on everyone, but we emerged on the other side with a clearer path forward. The kids were adjusting to the new reality, and I made sure they knew they were loved and supported every step of the way. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Marissa looked at me with a small smile. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Yes, Marissa, we're going to be okay. We're a family, and nothing will change that." Junior nodded, his eyes bright with determination. "Yeah, we can get through anything together." Little Lenny, not fully understanding everything, grinned and echoed, "Together." As I looked at my children, I felt a sense of hope. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but we were stronger together, and together we would face whatever came our way. The legal battles had ended, but the emotional fallout was only beginning. The kids were adjusting to our new reality, but the pain and confusion were still fresh. Every day was a struggle to find some sense of normalcy. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, Marissa approached me. Her usually confident demeanor was replaced with uncertainty. "Dad, can we talk?" she asked, her voice small. "Of course, honey," I said, setting down the dish towel. "What's on your mind?" She sat down at the kitchen table, her eyes downcast. I don't understand why Mom did what she did. Didn't she love us? Didn't she love you?" I sat down across from her, feeling the weight of her questions. "Marissa, your mom did love us. I believe she still does in her own way. But sometimes people make mistakes, big mistakes, and those mistakes can hurt the people they care about." Marissa's eyes filled with tears. "But why wasn't she there when we needed her? Why did she choose him over us?" I reached out and took her hand. "I wish I had all the answers, sweetheart. What I do know is that none of this is your fault. Your mom's actions were her own, and they don't change how much I love you or how much you mean to me." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I just feel so lost, Dad. Everything's changed so much." "I know, Marissa," I said softly, "but we're going to get through this together. It's okay to feel sad and confused. Just remember that we're still a family, and we'll always have each other." Junior, who had been quietly listening from the doorway, stepped into the room. "Dad, do you think Mom will ever come back to live with us?" I shook my head, trying to find the right words. "Junior, your mom and I aren't going to be together anymore. But she'll still be a part of your lives. She loves you both very much." Junior's face crumpled, and he ran to me, burying his face in my chest. "I miss her, Dad." "I know, buddy," I said, holding him tight. "I miss her too." Little Lenny, sensing the tension, toddled into the room with her favorite stuffed bunny. She climbed onto my lap, looking up at me with wide eyes. "Daddy, why's everyone sad?" I kissed the top of her head, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're just talking about some things that are hard to understand right now, Lenny. But it's okay to be sad sometimes. Can we play a game?" she asked, her innocent eyes filled with hope. I smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Of course we can. How about we all play a game together?" Marissa and Junior nodded, and we spent the next hour playing Lenny's favorite board game. The laughter and smiles were a welcome relief from the heavy emotions that had filled the room earlier. As I tucked the kids into bed that night, Marissa hugged me tightly. "Thanks, Dad, for everything." "Anytime, sweetheart," I said, kissing her forehead. "I love you." "I love you too," she whispered. In Junior's room, he looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Dad, will things ever feel normal again?" "Eventually, buddy," I said, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "It might take some time, but we'll find our new normal. Just remember, we're in this together." He nodded, a small smile breaking through his tears. "Okay, Dad." Finally, in Lenny's room, I tucked her in and handed her the stuffed bunny. "Sleep tight, princess." "Good night, Daddy," she said, hugging the bunny close. "I love you." "I love you too," I replied, feeling a surge of emotion. As I closed her door, I let out a deep breath. The emotional fallout was far from over, but tonight had shown me that we were stronger than I had thought. We had each other, and together, we could face whatever came our way. Lying in bed that night, I thought about the future. It wouldn't be easy, but we had taken the first steps toward healing. One day at a time, we would rebuild our lives and find a new sense of normalcy. And through it all, my love for my children would remain unwavering, a constant in an ever-changing world. The months following the legal battles and emotional turmoil were challenging, but we slowly began to find our footing. The kids and I settled into a new routine, one that didn't include Caroline in our day-to-day lives. It was hard at first, but over time, we began to heal. One sunny Saturday, I decided it was time for a change. The house felt heavy with memories, and we needed something new to look forward to. I called a family meeting in the living room. "All right, team," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "I've been thinking. How would you all feel about a little adventure?" Marissa raised an eyebrow. "What kind of adventure, Dad?" "Yeah," Junior chimed in, his eyes lighting up. "What are you planning?" I smiled, feeling a spark of excitement. "I think it's time we moved. A fresh start in a new place. What do you think?" Marissa and Junior exchanged glances, then looked at me with cautious optimism. "Where would we go?" Marissa asked. "I found a nice house on the other side of town," I explained. "It's closer to a big park and has a great school district. I think it would be good for all of us to have a change of scenery." Lenny, who was playing with her stuffed bunny, looked up and said, "Will we still be together, Daddy?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said, lifting her onto my lap. "We'll always be together." Marissa smiled, a genuine smile that I hadn't seen in a while. "I think it sounds great, Dad. A fresh start could be good for all of us." Junior nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, let's do it. I want to see the new house." With the kids on board, I set the wheels in motion. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of packing, planning, and saying goodbye to our old home. It was bittersweet, but the promise of new beginnings kept us going. Moving day arrived, and as we pulled up to our new house, I felt a sense of hope. The house was perfect, a cozy two-story with a big backyard and plenty of space for the kids to play. The neighborhood was friendly, and I could already see us fitting in. As we unpacked, a woman from next door walked over. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. "Hi there, I'm Angelina," she said, extending her hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood." "Thanks," I said, shaking her hand. "I'm Greg, and these are my kids, Marissa, Junior, and Lenny." Angelina smiled at the kids. "It's great to meet you all. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. We've got a wonderful community here." "Thanks, Angelina," I said, feeling a genuine sense of relief. "We appreciate it." Over the next few days, we settled into our new home. The kids adjusted quickly, making friends at their new school and exploring the nearby park. I focused on creating a stable, loving environment for them, determined to make this new beginning a success. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I was sitting on the porch when Angelina walked over. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "Not at all," I said, gesturing to the empty chair beside me. She sat down, looking up at the stars. "You've got great kids, Greg. They seem to be adjusting well." "Thanks," I said, smiling. "They're resilient. I'm really proud of them." She nodded. "It's not easy starting over, but sometimes it's exactly what we need." "Yeah," I agreed. "It's been a tough year, but I'm hopeful. This feels like the right place for us." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying the peace of the evening. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of calm. Our new beginning was off to a promising start. As the weeks turned into months, we embraced our new life. The kids thrived in their new school, and I found joy in watching them grow and adapt. Angelina became a good friend, always there with a kind word or a helping hand. One Saturday morning, as we were having breakfast, Marissa looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "Dad, do you think we're going to be okay?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "I know we will be, Marissa. We've been through a lot, but we're stronger because of it. This is our fresh start, and I'm so proud of how far we've come." Junior grinned. "Yeah, we're pretty awesome, aren't we?" Lenny giggled, nodding enthusiastically. "We are." I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through my heart. "Yes, we are. And we're going to keep moving forward together." As we finished our breakfast and headed out to explore the park, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Our journey had been difficult, but we had found our way through the darkness. This new beginning was a testament to our resilience, our love, and our unbreakable bond as a family. And with each new day, we were building a future filled with hope and possibility.